On the morning of May 19th, 1536, the sun rose over the Tower of London, casting long shadows across the green lawn, and Anne Boleyn, Queen of England, made her final journey to the scaffold. Her first words as she stood atop it, "I am come hither to die," became etched in history, but they were not the words she had intended to speak. What few realize is that the speech she delivered, measured and graceful, was a carefully crafted performance, one that concealed much more than it revealed. Anne Boleyn, once the beloved second wife of King Henry VIII, was now condemned to death under charges that would have seemed impossible to her just a few short years earlier. Accused of adultery, incest, and high treason, Anne had become a political pawn in a game of court intrigue. The accusations against her, historians widely agree, were fabricated, politically motivated, and utterly false. Yet standing before the small crowd gathered inside the tower's walls, Anne did not declare her innocence. Instead, her words were restrained, dignified, and profoundly composed, an ironic contrast to the chaos and injustice she had endured. She began by offering a final tribute to her King Henry VIII, calling him a gentle and sovereign lord, and urging those present to pray for his long reign. To the untrained eye, it might have appeared that she was resigned to her fate, her spirit broken. But Anne's actions were not motivated by fear or submission. They were the product of a much deeper calculation. What few know is that Anne had prepared a very different speech, one that would have declared her innocence, addressed the wrongful charges leveled against her, and perhaps most importantly, affirmed her unwavering faith. She was not allowed to give it. Tudor protocol dictated that condemned prisoners make no public statements that could incite sympathy or undermine the authority of the crown. Anne's request to speak freely was denied, and her silence on the scaffold was not a matter of personal choice, but one imposed upon her by the very people who had orchestrated her fall from grace. The man who would carry out her execution, William Kingston, the constable of the Tower, recorded her mental clarity in her final days. He wrote to Thomas Cromwell, the king's chief minister, noting that Anne had expressed a desire to speak, but was keenly aware of the consequences of doing so. She said she would like to have some word to speak, but would not offend his grace, he wrote. Anne's awareness that she was being watched even in her final moments reveals how completely her execution had been scripted, not just for her death, but for the maintenance of royal power. The scaffold, the place where Anne would meet her fate, was not simply a site of justice. It was a political tool, a stage for the monarchy's final act of control over her. Her public silence, imposed by the king's ministers, revealed just how much her execution was not about justice or truth, but about maintaining the narrative of power and legitimacy. Anne's final moments were not hers to command. They belonged to the crown, and every detail from her calm demeanor to the restraint in her voice was calculated to serve Henry VIII's image. What Anne was forbidden to say, the truth of her thoughts, her feelings, her final pleas, may be more telling than the composed words she was permitted to speak. In this silencing, Henry VIII not only marked the end of a queen's life, but also crafted a moment in history that would echo through the centuries, revealing the extent to which power can shape the final act of a person's life. Anne Boleyn's death was not a tragic, spontaneous event. It was a meticulously planned spectacle designed to uphold the power of the crown at any cost. The execution itself, as much a symbol as an act of finality, was a rare moment in English history. It wasn't just the death of a queen that set this event apart. It was the presence of a foreign executioner, a swordsman summoned from France. In Tudor England, beheadings were typically carried out by an axe, a method that more often than not was messy and imprecise. But Henry VIII, with calculated intent, decided that Anne's death would be carried out by sword, a more refined method associated with noble executions in France. The decision to use a French swordsman was not one of mercy, it was a political gesture. The choice of the sword symbolized a certain dignity, an air of nobility, that Henry wished to associate with Anne's death. By choosing the sword, he could distance himself from the brutality of the act, creating the illusion of grace and magnanimity. Yet beneath this surface of refinement was a cold, strategic calculation. Henry needed to maintain the appearance of mercy, even as he executed the woman for whom he had once torn apart the very fabric of England. The executioner, whose name has been lost to history, is often identified in contemporary accounts as Jean Rambaud. A master swordsman from Calais, Rambaud was chosen for his skill in the swift, clean method of decapitation used in French noble executions. He was paid handsomely for his work, a sum greater than many English nobles earned in a year, a reflection of the importance of his role in the performance. In the days leading up to the execution, Rimbaud practiced in the tower's courtyard, honing his technique to ensure that Anne's death would be swift and precise. This was not a mercy killing. It was a choreographed spectacle designed to create the illusion of grace and nobility, while the truth of Anne's political execution remained buried beneath the surface. Anne herself seemed acutely aware of the performance unfolding around her. Sir William Kingston in his accounts notes that she commented on the quality of the executioner's work, remarking with dark humor, "I heard say the executioner was very good, and I have a little neck." In this moment, Anne's gallows humor shone through, revealing her awareness of the drama playing out at her expense. When she reached the scaffold and knelt to pray, she asked nervously, "Shall I say my prayers now?" Her question was not one of doubt in her faith, but one born of uncertainty about when the final blow would come. It was a poignant reminder that even in the face of death, she remained caught in a political game that was beyond her control. When the moment came, the executioner stepped forward and struck swiftly. In less than 45 seconds, Anne Boleyn was dead. Her body, unceremoniously placed in an arrow chest, was buried quickly in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, without the fanfare of a royal funeral or the solemnity that might be expected for such a significant figure. Instead, her death was hastily hidden from public view, further emphasizing the political nature of her execution. Anne's execution was more than the tragic end of a queen. It was a calculated act of political theater designed to send a message. In sacrificing her, Henry VIII sought not only to rid himself of a rival, but to demonstrate the absolute power of the monarchy. In the swift and controlled execution of Anne Boleyn, the king made a powerful statement: even queens could fall when ambition and statecraft demanded it. Her death, executed with chilling precision, reminds us that power, when wielded without conscience, can sever even the closest ties, and that no one is beyond the reach of those who control the stage. History teaches us that ambition, when unchecked, can rewrite the destinies of the powerful and the powerless alike. Anne Boleyn's story is not just a tragic royal downfall, it is a testament to the lengths to which rulers will go to maintain their hold on power. And in her final words, "To Jesus Christ I commend my soul. Lord Jesus, receive my soul," Anne left behind a legacy of quiet dignity in the face of immense political cruelty. What do you think was her calm acceptance? A final act of inner grace? Or was it simply a necessary act of compliance in a world where even the highest of queens were subject to the whims of those in power? The truth of Anne's final moments, her silenced thoughts, may echo louder than the words she was allowed to speak. ChatGPT deny. The final moments of Anne Boleyn, Queen of England, are not just a tragic tale of a fallen monarch, but a profound lesson in the interplay of power control and political manipulation. As she stood on the scaffold, her calm composure and restrained dignity were not simply a reflection of personal strength, but a strategic submission to the forces that controlled her fate. Anne's silence in her final speech speaks volumes about how power seeks not only to control life and death, but also to dictate the narrative of history. Her silencing reveals the harsh reality that sometimes the things left unsaid carry more weight than what is actually spoken. Henry VIII's choice to bring in a foreign executioner and use a sword rather than an axe was a calculated move to shape public perception and distance himself from the brutality of the act. This manipulation of perception underscores a powerful lesson: how we present ourselves or others can alter the course of events. In leadership and in life, the image we craft can be as significant as the reality we live. Anne's fall also serves as a reminder of the dangerous cost of unchecked ambition. Her tragic end shows the destructive forces that ambition can unleash, and how even the highest of figures are not immune to its effects. It compels us to reflect on the price of power and what sacrifices we are willing to make in its pursuit. Amid the chaos and injustice of her situation, Anne's graceful acceptance of her fate demonstrates an invaluable lesson in inner strength. In the face of extreme adversity, Anne chose to remain composed, teaching us the importance of grace under pressure. Even when the world seems stacked against us, maintaining our dignity can be a form of resistance in itself. Ultimately, Anne Boleyn's execution was not only a personal tragedy, but a moment in history that highlights the lengths to which those in power will go to preserve their control. As we look back on her final moments, we are reminded that even in the darkest times, how we carry ourselves and the choices we make can leave an indelible mark on history.